Hello everybody and welcome to episode 8 of the Max's Models Air Racer series. This one's on the Wedell-Williams racer and its designer Jimmy Wedell. James Robert Wedell was born on March 31st, 1900 in Texas City, Texas, and would become a famous race pilot in the early 1930s. He was also a self-taught aircraft designer and builder. He and his brother Walter, who was a year younger, were both mechanically inclined and loved aviation. Jimmy dropped out of school in the 9th grade and opened the Black Star Garage behind the family home. He repaired cars and motorcycles, and in 1913 he learned to fly and later taught his brother. The two Wedell brothers acquired 2 junked airplanes and made a new flyable aircraft from the parts. They then began to fly as exhibition pilots and barnstormed along the Gulf Coast. During World War I, after flying in Mexico and allegedly flying guns, as well as barnstorming the Gulf Coast, the Army hired Jimmy as a civilian instructor of cadet flyers. After the war, Wedell returned to his little garage and began designing and building racing planes and barnstorming the country. In 1922, the Wedell brothers left for New Orleans, where they started an air service and a flying school. This is where they met millionaire Harry P. Williams of Patterson, Louisiana. The Wedell-Williams Company was formed when Jimmy Wedell began a business partnership with Williams in 1929. He had been given Williams flying lessons, they bonded and decided to go into business together. They even managed to get an airmail contract between New Orleans and Houston. But Jimmy had an infectious love of air racing, which in turn infected Williams as well. Jimmy was able to convince Williams to finance the building of a racer for the 1930 Miami air races. The first aircraft was named WE-dell, short for Wedell-Williams. But the development dragged on and it became apparent it was not going to be ready in time for the 1930 Miami event. So Wedell shifted development of the WE-dell and design began on a new aircraft called the WE-wing. While all of this was going on, Wedell began the construction of yet a third aircraft, the WE-dell Jr., but the design proved to be underpowered. It was a typical period design with braced low-wing monoplane and fixed landing gear with large spats. It was dubbed the Model 22, but proved to be a disappointment and it was abandoned. Wedell then turned his attention back to the WE-dell and rebuilt it with the benefit of his recent experience. It finally obtained decent performance and was named the Model 44. When a Pratt & Whitney Wasp Jr. was mounted on front, the airplane's potential could be seen, and that year, the Model 44 placed second at the National Air Races. Although it began as the rebuilding of the WE-dell 1929 racer, it soon turned into a completely new racing aircraft. Powered by a large radial engine, and with all of the refinements that Wedell could think of, it would vastly outperform the previous model. The Model 44s would become the dominant racers in the 1930s, setting innumerable records, including setting a world speed record in 1933. Jimmy Wedell won the Thompson Trophy Air Race that same year. Wedell's company, now called the Wedell-Williams Air Service Corporation, won 14 distinguished finishes in the Thompson and Bendix Trophy races, and the Wedell-Williams Model 44 was the racing plane that everyone had to have. In total, there would be 4 examples of the aircraft built, but not without some serious setbacks. For a while, the Wedell-Williams model became one of the fastest aircraft flying in the United States. Wedell, who was a shooting enthusiast, said it was hot as a 44 and twice as fast. During his lifetime, Wedell held more speed records and long-distance records than any other racing pilot. He was also the first pilot to record flying over 300 miles per hour in a land plane. He also set the 3 flag speed mark, flying from Ottawa, Canada to Washington, D.C. and on to Mexico City in 11 hours and 53 minutes. Wedell's best year in air racing was 1933, when he won races at every competition he entered. Soon after the 1931 Nationals, Wedell rebuilt both the 44 and the WE-wing. He also got a contract to make another Model 44 for famed air racer Roscoe Turner. This is when a tragedy struck. Jimmy had personally test flown the aircraft as soon as it was assembled, but his partner Williams wanted it to be tested under maximum gross weight and under stress before it was delivered to Turner. Jimmy Wedell took it up with some 30 pounds of iron to make up for the difference between his weight and Colonel Turner's. He came roaring toward the airport at high speed, and as he reached the edge of the airport, a wing flutter developed which caused the main flying wire to snap. At this point, the left wing seemed to explode and collapsed. Jimmy basically rode the engine up to a safe altitude, at which point he bailed out just as the racer came apart. His parachute opened, and he barely made a safe landing, although he did lose a shoe in the adventure. After this incident, the company contracted an aeronautical engineer, Howard Barlow. He redesigned the wings, which were used on the second racer that was built for Roscoe Turner. It was an exceptional performer. The rest of the Model 44s would have this new wing mounted on them, and the previous one would be retrofitted with the new wing. These three aircraft went on to dominate air racing for the next several years. Model 44s were raced in 1932, 1933, and 1934 Bendix Trophy races, as well as the 1934 Thompson and Shell Trophy. The plane would also go on to set some world records. In September of 1933, at the International Air Race in Chicago, the 44, piloted by Jimmy Wedell himself, set the new world speed record of 305 miles per hour. Then, on the 24th of June, 1934, Jimmy Wedell was killed in an air crash while flying his Moth aircraft. He was giving a student pilot, Frank Sneering, a flying lesson. The irony of this experienced pilot being killed in a routine training flight was lost on no one. He had established many records, too many to mention here, and his name still looms large in the air racing history to this day. Following Jimmy's death, Doug Davis was tapped to fly the Model 44 in the Bendix Trophy race. Davis won the 1934 Bendix Trophy, but crashed and was killed while leading the Thompson Trophy race in September of that year. Roscoe Turner won the Thompson Trophy in a different Model 44 with a different engine, while J.A. Worthen, also flying a Model 44, placed third. Jimmy's last design prior to his death was the Model 45, November Romeo 62 Yankee. This ship was built in 1933 and tested by Jimmy in June. The Model 45 had a full cantilever wing, which meant no external strut bracing, and a retractable landing gear. Its design was actually bought by the Army Air Service, just the design, not the actual aircraft, and it was designated the XP-34, although it was never put into production. First unveiled in February of 1934 at the Pan American Air Races in New Orleans, with Jimmy Wedell at the controls, she turned a speed of 264 miles per hour. But Jimmy's untimely death prevented him from getting the bugs worked out on the Model 45. However, at the 1934 National Air Races, John Worthen flew the ship to a second place in the Bendix race. He averaged 203 miles an hour and probably could have taken first place had he not overshot Cleveland and landed at Erie by mistake. Remember, navigation was extremely primitive in those days. It was also entered in the Shell Speed Dashes, where Worthen managed to get a clocked speed of 302 miles per hour with the Wasp Senior engine. A year later, Jimmy's brother Walter died in a mysterious crash out over the Gulf of Mexico. And that same year, his former partner Harry P. Williams also died in a plane crash, as well as race pilot Red Worthen. After that, Williams' widow sold off the remaining business assets to the company that would later become Eastern Airlines. And so ended the incredible, if not brief, years of the Wedell-Williams Air Service and its racing airplanes. But the existing ships flew on, changing owners many times and continuing to compete. As the Second World War approached, Old 92 was used as salvage and had its parts cannibalized to keep other aircraft going. Roscoe Turner's plane, however, was retired and stored and survives to this day as the only remaining original Wedell-Williams Model 44. It is on display at the Crawford Auto Aviation Museum in Cleveland, Ohio. 3 replica Model 44s are on display at the Louisiana State Museum in Patterson, Louisiana. Well, that's a brief look at the amazing Wedell-Williams racers and Jimmy Wedell, an air race plane designer, builder, and pilot with a 9th grade education who could not even read a blueprint. I'd say a pretty impressive guy. I'm Max of Max's Models. Model on.
Whatever happened to those good old days? In olden days a glimpse of stalking was looked on as something shocking. Now heaven knows, anything goes. Good authors too, who once knew better words, now only use four-letter words. Writing prose, anything goes. The world has gone mad today, and good's bad today, and black's white today, and day's night today. When most guys today that women prize today are just silly gigolos. So though I'm not a great romancer, I know that you're bound to answer when I propose. Anything goes, anything goes. When mothers pack and leave poor fathers behind, they decide they'd rather be tennis pros. Anything goes. Just think of those shocks you got, and those knocks you got, and those blues you got from that news you got, and those pains you got, if any brains you got from those little radios. So every night the set that's smart is indulging in nudist parties and studios. Anything goes, anything goes. They used to wear Victorian clothes, but now they all show silken hose. Heaven knows, anything goes.